Imagine walking into your high-stakes corporate job, the kind of place where people whisper about quarterly earnings and wear suits that cost more than my car, only to find that your 12-year-old son hasn't just been hanging out in the break room. He has literally turned the basement storage wing into the city's most exclusive, underground teenage nightclub. I'm talking strobe lights, a soda bar with mocktail menus, a professional-grade sound system, and a guest list that would make a Hollywood publicist sweat. My boss, the CEO, was standing right next to me when the bass dropped so hard it rattled the pens on his desk 3 floors up, and honestly, in that moment, I didn't know if I should scream, cry, or hand my son a business degree. Was I a total failure as a parent for letting this happen right under my nose? Or was my kid some kind of twisted genius who just took bring your child to work day way too far? I need you to tell me, if you opened a door expecting to find filing cabinets, and instead found 100 middle schoolers raving to EDM, would you ground him for life or ask for a cut of the profits? To understand how I ended up in the middle of a corporate security nightmare, you have to understand my life for the last 6 months. I'm a single mom working as a senior logistics coordinator for a massive tech firm. It's a high-pressure environment, the kind where 9 to 5 actually means 7 to whenever the servers stop crashing. Because of the crazy hours and a sudden lack of childcare after my usual sitter moved away, I started bringing my son Leo to the office after school. Leo has always been a quiet kid, or so I thought. He's tech-savvy, always messing around with wires and gadgets, and he's got this weirdly charming way of talking people into things. At the office, everyone loved him. He'd sit in the break room with his laptop, occasionally helping the older staff with their iPhone settings or fixing the jammed printer. My boss, Mr. Henderson, even joked that Leo was the most productive member of the IT department. Because he was so well-behaved, I stopped checking in on him every 20 minutes. I'd give him a badge that gave him access to the safe zones of the building, tell him to stay out of the way, and I'd dive back into my spreadsheets. Little did I know, Leo had spent those weeks scouting the building like a diamond thief casing a vault. He discovered that the sub-basement B4 level, which was used for storing obsolete furniture and old server racks, was almost never visited by security, because the cameras down there had been disconnected during a renovation that stalled 3 years ago. It started small. Leo told me he wanted to start a study group with a few friends from school, and asked if they could come over after hours since the office had high-speed internet and comfortable chairs. I figured, why not? It kept him occupied and out of trouble. But Leo didn't bring books. He started bringing in crates. He used his charming kid persona to befriended the night janitors, even bringing them coffee and donuts, so they didn't question why a 12-year-old was wheeling heavy boxes into the freight elevator at 5 p.m. He scavenged old LED strips from the tech waste bins, repurposed discarded monitors to create a visual wall, and somehow, I still don't know how, he managed to bypass the building's restricted Wi-Fi to set up a dedicated gaming and music server. He called the place the Vault. He created a private Instagram account with disappearing posts to advertise to the kids in our district. He wasn't just letting kids hang out. He was charging a membership fee of $10, which included unlimited sodas that he was buying in bulk using the money he'd made from selling premium snacks at school. The operation was seamless. While I was upstairs stressing over shipping manifests and international tariffs, my son was downstairs managing a staff of 3 other 8th graders who acted as hosts and security. He had a system where kids would arrive at the side entrance, the one used by couriers, and use a specific knock or a digital QR code he'd sent them. For 3 weeks, this went on. I would finish my work at 7:30 p.m., walk down to the break room, and find Leo sitting there, looking perfectly innocent with a math book open, acting like he'd been there all along. I'd say, "Ready to go, honey?" And he'd just nod, pack his bag, and we'd go home. I had no idea that 10 minutes prior, he'd sent a mass text to 50 kids telling them the club was closing for the night and to exit through the back stairs. The level of organization was terrifying. He even had a loyalty card system. But the complexity of his operation didn't stop there. Leo had actually created different VIP tiers for the kids. If you paid an extra $5, you got access to the chill zone, which was basically a corner of the basement where he'd set up old beanbag chairs he found in the building's attic and a vintage Nintendo 64 he'd repaired. He was even selling merchandise. plain white t-shirts he'd hand-painted with a neon V for the vault. I found a stash of these in his laundry basket once, and he told me they were for an art project. I was so busy worrying about my own career and the mounting pressure of the tech industry that I just believed him. I feel like such an idiot looking back. I remember one specific Tuesday where I saw him talking to the head of building security, a guy named Mike who's about 6'4" and looks like he eats bricks for breakfast. I thought Leo was just being polite, but later I realized he was actually consulting Mike on the blind spots of the building's new motion sensors under the guise of doing a school project on infrared technology. He was literally getting the security guards to help him optimize his illegal nightclub's perimeter. He had also struck a deal with the local pizza place. He'd order 20 pizzas to the back dock, and because the delivery guys were only a few years older than him, they thought it was the coolest thing they'd ever seen. They started giving him a bulk discount, which Leo then marked up by 200% per slice. He had a ledger, you guys. A real, honest-to-God physical ledger, hidden inside a hollowed-out chemistry textbook where he tracked his overhead, his inventory of Red Bull and Sprite, and his staff payroll. He was paying his little friends in store credit and the occasional $10 bill. One of the kids was a literal tech genius who had rigged the old server cooling fans to work as a makeshift ventilation system, so the basement wouldn't get too sweaty while 100 kids were doing the renegade dance. Every time I think about the logistics, my head spins. He had thought of everything, including a parent alert system. He'd hacked a cheap baby monitor and placed the receiver in the break room where I usually sat. If he heard my voice or the sound of my heels on the linoleum, he had a code red button that turned off the music and turned on the standard overhead lights instantly. I was living in a spy movie and I was the clueless mark. I even remember one night I was working late on a massive shipment to Dubai, and Leo walked into my office with a cup of the premium coffee from the executive lounge. He told me he'd fixed the machine for the night staff, and they gave him a cup for me. I felt so touched, thinking my son was such a helpful, sweet soul. In reality, he was probably just buttering me up so I wouldn't notice him smuggling a fog machine into the elevator 10 minutes later. He had managed to build a network of informants within the building that would make the CIA jealous. The cleaning crew, the delivery drivers, the IT interns, everyone was either charmed by him or on his payroll in some small way. He even had a dispute resolution protocol. Apparently, 2 kids got into a fight over a girl in the basement, and Leo had them sit down in a mediation session, using old HR forms he'd found in the trash. He told them that the vault was a place of business and that drama was bad for the brand. They actually listened to him. It makes me wonder what kind of monster I'm raising. I started noticing small things, though I was too exhausted to connect the dots. My car would always smell faintly of artificial grape and blue raspberry. I found a receipt for 48 packages of glow sticks in his backpack. When I asked him about it, he said he was doing a science experiment on bioluminescence. I was so proud of his scientific curiosity that I actually bought him more glow sticks. I was literally funding the lighting for his underground rave. He also started dressing differently, more executive casual. He asked for a blazer for his birthday. I thought he was just maturing. Little did I know he was dressing for the role of a nightclub mogul. The Friday of the grand event was when the wheels fell off. Leo had decided to host a neon night and had somehow convinced a local high school kid who wanted to be a DJ to bring in a full-size subwoofer. I was stuck in a late-night emergency board meeting. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, was in a foul mood because our quarterly projections were down. We were sitting in the executive suite, which is directly above the ventilation shaft that runs all the way to the basement. Around 6:30 p.m., I felt a slight vibration in the floor. I thought it was the HVAC system acting up. By 7 p.m., the vibration turned into a rhythmic thumping. Mr. Henderson paused mid-sentence, looking at his coffee cup as tiny ripples formed in the liquid. He asked me if there was construction scheduled for the basement. I told him no, but the thumping got louder. It wasn't construction. It was Levels by Avicii, and it was vibrating the very foundation of the building. We tried to ignore it for 10 minutes, but then the bass hit a frequency that actually caused a framed portrait of the company founder to tilt on the wall. Mr. Henderson, being the no-nonsense guy he is, decided we were going to investigate right then and there. He grabbed his flashlight and headed for the elevator. And I followed, my heart sinking into my stomach. I had this sudden, horrifying intuition. As we descended to the B4 level, the music got louder and louder, a pulsing, physical force that you could feel in your teeth. When the elevator doors opened, we weren't met with the smell of dust and old paper. We were met with the smell of popcorn, cheap cologne, and the sight of a neon-lit hallway. There was a velvet rope, actually a red jump rope, strung across the corridor, and a kid I recognized from Leo's soccer team was standing there with a clipboard, wearing sunglasses indoors. He looked at the CEO and said, "Are you on the list, Pops? VIP is full, but I can get you a general admission stamp for 20. I thought I was going to faint. Mr. Henderson pushed past him, and we rounded the corner into the main storage bay. It was a full-blown party. There were lasers reflecting off the silver server racks, kids dancing on top of old office desks, and a professional-looking bar where Leo was currently shaking a mocktail shaker like he was a seasoned pro in Vegas. He was wearing a custom-made The Vault staff hoodie and actually had a headset on. He was directing 2 other kids on how to restock the ice bucket. It was the most organized chaos I have ever witnessed. So, that is the insane situation I found myself in. My boss staring at a basement full of teenagers while my son is literally the king of the underground. I was stood there, paralyzed, watching my career flash before my eyes while my 12-year-old handed a Shirley Temple to a girl in a tutu. Before I tell you the absolute chaos that happened when the lights went up and the fallout that followed, I want you to pause right now and tell me what you would have done. Would you have started screaming? Or would you have been low-key impressed by the sheer hustle? Do you think the company had a right to fire me for this? Or is this just a case of kids being kids, with way too much access to corporate real estate? Drop a comment right now, because I really need to know if I'm the only person who thinks this is both a nightmare and a legendary story. The silence that followed Mr. Henderson reaching over and ripping the power cord out of the DJ's laptop was the loudest thing I've ever heard. The music died with a pathetic whine. The lasers flickered out, leaving only the dim, flickering emergency lights of the basement. 100 kids turned around at once, and when they saw a very tall, very angry man in a 3-piece suit and a very pale woman who looked like she was having a stroke, the panic set in. It was like someone had kicked an anthill. Kids were diving under desks, trying to scramble up the freight elevator, and running for the stairs. It was a stampede of middle schoolers in glow sticks. Leo, to his credit, or perhaps his downfall, didn't run. He just set the shaker down, wiped the counter with a rag, and looked at me. He said, "Hey Mom, you're out of the meeting early. We were just finishing up the networking event." I couldn't even speak. Mr. Henderson's face went from pale to a shade of purple I didn't know existed in nature. He didn't yell at the kids. He just looked at Leo and asked, "Who authorized this?" Leo, with the straightest face you've ever seen, replied, "Technically, the space was abandoned, sir. I've actually improved the air circulation by cleaning the vents. And I was going to donate 5% of the proceeds to the company's charity foundation. Also, we found 3 boxes of mislabeled inventory from 2019 while we were cleaning, so really, I've saved the company money on a physical audit." The audacity of this kid was mind-blowing. But the logistics of the shutdown were even crazier. We had to coordinate with the local police department just to get all the kids out safely. Leo actually helped them. He had a printed-out evacuation plan taped to the back of a server rack. He started directing traffic, telling kids which exits were blocked and which stairs were the fastest. One officer actually asked me if Leo was part of some youth leadership program. I had to explain that no, he was just the primary suspect. The police were searching the bar for anything illegal, but all they found were high-end syrups, organic lemons, and an impressive collection of sparkling cider. Leo had even made sure everyone had designated walkers, older siblings who were responsible for making sure the younger kids got home. He'd basically created a more responsible environment than most actual clubs. Once the basement was cleared, I had to face the music upstairs. The board members who were in that meeting were still there, having watched the whole thing on the security monitors that had miraculously come back online the second Leo's jamming device was unplugged. They were staring at me like I was a criminal mastermind. I spent the rest of the night in a conference room with 3 lawyers and the head of security. They weren't just worried about the nightclub. They were obsessed with how Leo had bypassed their multi-million-dollar security system. Leo was sitting in the next room, eating a slice of leftover pizza, while I was being threatened with everything from immediate termination to a lawsuit for corporate espionage. The next morning, I drove to the office at 6 a.m. to pick up my things. I was convinced it was over. I'd already updated my resume and looked for jobs in other cities. I felt like a failure, not just as an employee, but as a mom. How had I not known? How had I been so blind to the fact that my son was running a miniature Las Vegas in the sub-basement? When I walked into Mr. Henderson's office, I expected a shouting match. Instead, he was laughing. He was watching the TikTok video that had gone viral. It featured a montage of the neon night, with a caption that said, "When the corporate world is boring but your friend's mom's office is a vibe." It had 5 million views, and was being shared by major tech influencers. He looked at me and said, "Our brand has been struggling to reach the younger demographic for years. We've spent millions on consultants who told us to make relatable content. Your son did it in 3 weeks with some discarded monitors and a jump rope." He explained that the PR gold far outweighed the security headache. He did, however, make me sign a 20-page agreement stating that Leo would never be allowed on the premises without an armed escort until he was legal age. He also told me that the company was going to officially sponsor the youth center where I was donating the money, turning the whole scandal into a massive community outreach win. As for the aftermath at home, things were much more tense. Leo realized for the first time that his business could have cost me everything. When we got home that first night, he saw the box of my office supplies and finally stopped being the cool mogul. He actually cried. He told me he just wanted to prove he could make money, so I wouldn't have to work so many late nights anymore. It broke my heart. It didn't mean he was off the hook, though. I confiscated his laptop and his phone for 3 months. He had to use a 2005-era flip phone that could only call me and 911. He hated it. I also made him apologize to every single janitor and security guard he had manipulated. That was the hardest part for him, realizing that he hadn't just been smart, he'd been dishonest. He spent the summer working at my sister's farm, shoveling actual manure. It was a far cry from shaking mocktails in a neon basement. But you know what? He didn't complain after the first week. He actually started a spreadsheet for my sister to optimize her chicken feed costs. He just can't help himself. The vault is now a legend at my office. Every time a meeting gets boring, someone makes a joke about how we should go to the basement and see if Leo is back. I even found a vault sticker on the back of the CEO's laptop last week. I think he secretly misses the excitement. Looking back, this whole experience taught me that kids are way more observant and capable than we give them credit for. And that if you leave a bored 12-year-old alone for too long with a keycard, he might just build an empire. It was a massive wake-up call for me to be more present, to check on those study groups, and to realize that my son's quiet time is actually when he's most dangerous. It also showed me that my son has a drive that I shouldn't squash, just redirect into something that doesn't involve trespassing or unauthorized mocktail bars. He's already talking about starting a legal lemonade stand company that uses an app for delivery, and honestly, I'm just glad it's on the sidewalk and not in a sub-basement. If you enjoyed this crazy ride and you think Leo is either a genius or a total menace, make sure you like this video because it really helps me out. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story, because trust me, my life doesn't get any less chaotic than this. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Did I go too easy on him? Or was the internship offer from my boss the ultimate validation of his hustle? I'll see you all in the next story.